Welcome to the Quick Take. I'm Noah Thulin, also known as Young Keanu.
Whoa.
I don't know who gave me that name, but I'm definitely take umbrage against them. If that's the correct word for that. I'm joined by Kirk Yoshonis, our first guest. Is he the first guest? Our first Quick Take special guest. He is an expert in all things horror, so we thought it'd be perfect for the movie we're reviewing, the new Halloween. I don't really know what you'd call it. I mean, a lot of people think it's a remake. It's not. It's like a follow-up just to the first movie.
It's interesting how they just skip all 8 plus the other 2 remakes.
Yeah, just pretend like it never happened. But I guess that's the way of Hollywood now. Is the Rob Zombie remake, that's just called Halloween also, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, Halloween and Halloween 2, which are the same names as the first 2.
And now we just have Halloween.
So now there's 3 movies called Halloween that are essentially the same thing.
Get it together, Hollywood.
For real.
Theme song. Welcome back to the Quick Take. How are you? Thanks for coming back. You're great. We're going to be talking about the new Halloween movie, which we saw early.
The world premiere.
The world premiere at Toronto International Film Festival, which is pretty crazy that we were even able to see this movie.
We barely got in.
Yeah, we had to cut people apart. A lot of poor Canadians didn't make it out, so we could bring this review to you. So I hope you're happy. Laurie Strode comes to her final confrontation with Michael Myers, the masked figure who has haunted her since she narrowly escaped his killing spree on Halloween night 4 decades ago. Wow, 4 decades. And also it says final confrontation, which I find interesting.
The final one,
The
because it
last
always
one.
is.
They'll never make another Halloween, guys, especially if this one does really well. They're just going to leave it alone and respect what this movie was trying to go for.
It's really a flash in the pan franchise, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, is it actually 4 decades?
Yeah,
Like
78 was the first one.
Wow, I always love when they do that. I really like this movie. I was just hoping for just a regular slasher movie, maybe something a little more contemporary spin on it. But I was surprised at what they actually were going for with this movie. I thought of it kind of as like what Rocky Balboa did, where that series like hit a point where it was just like, what are we even doing with the series anymore? Do we even remember where we came from, sort of thing?
Sonic boom! Tiger! 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 Knee! Tiger! Uppercut! Tiger! Tiger!
And this really kind of brought it back to the original and tried to ground things.
Functions as a horror movie really well as being a sequel to Halloween, which I thought was really impressive because I just thought they were going to be like, oh yeah, here's a reference, here's another reference.
Yeah, and when it comes to the references, they, I think, did it the best way possible, in which a lot of them are like shot references. There are a lot of times where they'll set up a shot, it'll play on what you think of from the other Halloween movies, or they have the silver shamrock Halloween masks from Halloween 3.
Yeah.
Some kids are wearing in there. It was really surprising how they were very subtle with it. I think it knew where it was coming in from. It's like, we can't just repeat the exact same thing. People are gonna see these things coming. We gotta find a way to portray this story in a new way. And I think they did that.
Haddonfield feels very much like Haddonfield from the original. Like I remember there's a scene where they're walking down the sidewalk just as they did in the original, and there are trees and bushes, and it just feels like the exact same place. So I don't know if they shot it in the same place or not, but it just, they nailed the set.
Change in this movie is it's not just Laurie Strode, but also her daughter and granddaughter all dealing with the situation now.
Yeah, and I think that it doesn't necessarily feel only like a Halloween remake. It feels like a horror movie that is made for right now. I feel like the movie directly addresses cell phones and guns. Like people are like, oh, this isn't scary anymore because we have cell phones and now everybody has a gun. But you see, having a cell phone and having a gun isn't always the best thing to do.
Yeah, it didn't really help anyone in this movie too much.
The movie does a really good job like addressing what people kind of already had like pretenses about going into it.
And I think that's what like a horror movie kind of has to do now. I mean, it's especially when it's the slasher genre, which is probably the most played out genre, I mean, would you say, out of horror? And everyone just knows what's coming up, so you gotta find a way to make it interesting.
People want to see slashers because they're cathartic, like they've always been. You know, you either you have this rage that you want to let out, or you just want to be scared, you want to have these feelings that you can't have in real life.
I think Halloween is like a more solid movie than any of the other slashers. Like I think slashers are fun or entertaining, I guess, in a different way, in that they're more like very dark comedies. At least I see them that way, where it's just like, what craziness is going to happen? You're rooting for, Jason to like smash someone in a sleeping bag against a tree. Or whatever. But I always liked the original Halloween, particularly because of the way it's framed, in that this guy just is stalking this woman and just wants to kill her. And it's like, why? You don't know. At least as far as the first movie, you don't know why. He's just coming after her.
Yep.
And I think that same thing is brought up in this one, where it is just like this. There's no explanation as to anything. There's no embellishment. There's no, Michael doesn't have superpowers. And I think that goes a long way to making it creepier that way, because you won't understand why half these things are happening. And I think that far and away goes to elevate the creepiness of the movie.
Absolutely, and that's why Halloween, the idea of Michael Myers has been so effective for 40 years, is because it's like, if you don't want to get killed by Norman Bates, don't go to the Bates Motel.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to get killed by Jason Voorhees, don't go to Camp Crystal Lake.
And if you don't want to get killed by Freddy Krueger, just don't go to sleep. It's really easy. Look at me.
But if you don't want to get killed by Michael Myers, you don't have a choice,
Yeah,
because
he's coming after
in
you.
your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like that's all there is to it. So it kind of just brings the fear home. And I feel like this movie especially did a really good job keeping it there, making it modern, to make people realize, oh man, the reason that this worked is because it's scary, because it's in my comfort zone.
A big focus of this movie was taking what you expect from it and kind of shifting it. And I think one of the most obvious points of that is the not Loomis of this movie. He's introduced when Laurie meets him. It's like, oh, you're the new Loomis. Literally, that is her dialogue. And they take his character and they completely diverge from what Loomis was trying to do. And the guy ends up becoming a psychopath, basically, because he's been studying Michael for all these years. Especially the climax, on top of everything, was a great way, where you have Laurie lures him into this house that she's built, and it's just a big death trap for him, basically. And on top of that, I think they did a really good job of writing all like the one-off victims. They did a very good job of writing some humanity into them very quickly, because a lot of the people are just set up and then they're immediately taken out. And it's easy in slasher movies. The default is make them annoying, make them obnoxious, just make them, you want them to die, basically. With this movie, it was like, they all are very quickly written and set up and stuff like that. So yeah, when they do get killed, it's on top of the brutality. It does hit you more so than you would expect.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a characteristic that the original Halloween had as well. All Laurie's friends, you didn't really spend a whole lot of time with them, but they were characters and they seemed real, which I think plays into a lot of what John Carpenter said when he said, keep it simple. Like, these are real people. They're not just, you're not, just making fodder like you think they are. They're real people.
Speaking of John Carpenter, he did the score for this movie, because you can really tell he wrote some new pieces, especially I think the new
Halloween theme, yeah.
Yeah, and it was so good. Did such a great job of setting the different scenes.
There's an amazing score, but they also utilize silence quite a bit to kind of just build tension, which I thought was wonderful.
Like the cinematography of the movie, the way it was shot.
So good.
Again, another thing I was not expecting, because you can shoot horror movies really, one of the big draws of horror movies is that they're really cheap and simple and easy to shoot a lot of the time, but this movie did not slack on it. There's one very notable single take, just walks you through the streets and through these different houses. Yeah, what did you think of the cinematography?
It was fantastic. And there's a sequence where he's in the backyard and there's motion sensor lights that keep turning on behind him, and it looks so good, and it builds tension with just the cinematography a lot of times.
There's also like a lot of comedy. One of the writers is Danny McBride on this movie,
yes.
Which I at least had no idea he was involved with this at all beforehand. And I think they did a good job of undercutting that with the violence of the movie, which it is really violent, a lot of the kills. So you'll have one of the characters who's like kind of the comedy relief and stuff like that, and he's making jokes about it, but then when Michael actually gets up to him and starts, hacking him apart, it's like, Jesus Christ, it's like, what turn did we make here? And I think that was the perfect way to do it, because if you're adding comedy elements, you don't want that to take over the movie unless you're going for like some campy, cheesy horror movie, which this was definitely not. The way this movie wraps up, it wraps up just like the first one does. Yeah, where you could end it now if you wanted to, because they're ambiguous as to whether or not Michael actually gets taken out at the end. I think they can leave it alone here.
My theory is that might be why they named it Halloween, as opposed to like Halloween 11, Michael's Return, or come up with some subtitle or whatever. I think this would be a really good ending point, or it might be a really perfect opportunity to start that successful anthology that they tried.
That'd be cool. It'd be nice to have like newer ideas like that. But it is nice that we do have something that's very ingrained in the ways of old, sequel that is like, it feels new. It feels like modern in a really solid way, I thought. All right, Kirk, what are you gonna give this out of 5 whatevers?
I'm gonna give it 5 bloody teeth on a truck stop bathroom floor, because it's just so brutal and it's so much fun and it's so beautiful to look at. It really brings the franchise back to life that kind of trailed off there in the late 90s.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna completely agree. I'm gonna give it a 5 melting pumpkins out of 5. It came and brought this genre back in a new way, and it does feel like we could see a new revival of this. And I would like to, because I really hate the paranormal like overload we have of these movies. I'm just so sick of those movies. Like, hopefully this does divert us into something newer, I guess.
Smart slashers is where I'm hoping this goes.
Yeah, let's hope. All right, that's gonna do it, Kirk. I'm done with this. I think you're done with this.
Yeah, I gotta catch a train to Haddonfield to visit my Aunt Laurie.
Oh yeah? Well, thanks for being our first special guest.
Oh, thanks for having
me.
me.
And only. I don't think we're ever gonna do this again.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you this, Kirk, but
oh God,
we got a very strict process around here.
This is Austin. I thought it was honestly one of the greatest movies I have ever seen. I enjoyed it a lot.
Austin, the Mailfern intern, thank you. We can all leave the set today really with a sense of togetherness.
What?
Whoa.
Oh my God, oh my God. What did you do? This was supposed to be nice.
Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and MySpace and Spotify. Gmail, I think, is one of them. Or I'll come to your house. All right, that's it. Let's go, Kirk. In the back with Austin.